Good morning, students. Hello, students.
Good morning, sir.
So I will request who are there, if you can come online and if you can open your cameras. Yes, students. Okay. Please let me know, Hari Lakshmi ma'am, good morning. When to start? I think the students are still joining. We will wait for a few more minutes.
Yes, sir. We will inform, sir.
Sure, sure. Please let me know. I will start the session.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Yes, good morning. Yeah, tell
uh,
me.
sir, you can start the class, sir.
Okay, very good morning.
Yes.
So, students, how are you all? Hello, students. You can unmute yourself. Okay. In fact, what we have covered is basically started with Industry 4.0. We have covered AI, we have covered ML, IoT, right? We have talked about the new trends and mega trends that is happening around the world. We talk about some of the smart cities that are there, where huge amount of investments are going on. And today, basically, I'm going to walk you through a new topic, and that is very, very interesting. And what we see currently is that there is a huge trend that is coming up, and that is basically what you can see. A lot of investment is also happening, And in fact, in Karnataka and in Bangalore, you can see a lot of startups is happening. And where I'm going to talk about today is about the drone industry, right? So I will just maybe share my screen and I will just wanted to check with all of you if you can tell me what you understand by drone, right? Yes, student, what do you understand by drone? I want some volunteers, right? So if you can let me know what you want, you can able to see my screen.
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah. So what do you understand by drones? Because here you can see a lot of AI and ML also is used, right? And every day you can see some or other news on drones are also coming up. And good thing is that there are a lot of new startup happening in Bangalore. Already there are few IPOs happen in India who are manufacturing drones. If you can tell some of the names, you can see InfoEdge, Drone Acharya, Aerial Innovations, Paras Defense and Space Technologies. So these are the basically the startups or who have been manufacturing drones has went to the IPO. IPO means selling the shares into the stock market, and they have got very good response from the public. So as you can see, the public is also or the investors are basically looking forward to this niche area for their investment also, right? So what we can see, there is a huge trend and mega trend that are coming in the drone industry, right? So if you are interested to be part of this phenomenal growth in this industry, right, then you can look into this because what we foresee is that in India, drone industry is going to grow by leaps and bounds, right? And globally also you can see that drones is basically being used not only in defense, in the social areas also, or in commonly, for example, the logistic company are using, or basically in healthcare, or basically supplying the goods to the remote places. Or you can see the drones are used for the surveillance also, right? Aerial surveillance, and also for basically you can have in the agriculture where you can using the sensors, you can find out basically what is the current situation in the agricultural field, right? Whether there are basically the growth of the plants also through aerial surveillance, you can take a look, and also using the sensors, using the IoT, you can get those data, and based on that, you can do a lot of analytics, isn't it? You've seen in the marriages or that, in fact, the drones are used to take the photography also. So, students, how many of you are interested in cricket? Now, the Cricket World Cup is happening. Yes, students. You can unmute yourself and let me know. So, any of you are interested in cricket or you're not interested?
Yes, sir.
So, you have seen a lot of basically using drones, right? They are taking a lot of the photography and also the picture comes. If you go to the IPL, also, you will find that drones are used for a lot of basically kind of the viewership who are seeing in the TVs also. A lot of pictures are taken from drones, right? In fact, the drones are also used basically to manage the crowd also, right? Now, for example, in a stadium, there are multiple peoples that are coming, right? They also basically use the drone. Based on the drone, they want to check there is no issue or problem in any part of the stadium, right? So you can see the drone has been used in phenomenal way, right? So these are not for defense purpose, but for basically for the benefit of the people. Using the cameras in the drones, using the facial recognition, they can also identify whether any miscreant or basically person are there in the crowd or not, and they can basically tell the guards or basically the police to go to that place and basically able to catch the miscreant or basically the person, maybe if it's a terrorist or something, so that to prevent any situation which are not desired, right? Now, drones nowadays are playing a great role, right? You have seen currently that India is procuring the MKU 9B rated drones from basically USA. And for the 31 drones that India is procuring, India is paying almost a 9 billion, $3 billion India is paying, right? So it's a huge amount of money India is paying for only 31 drones, right? So those are very, very advanced drones. Those drones not only can done the surveillance and they can carry missiles also. If required, they can fire them. Now also you will be very happy to know that India has already started exporting drones to some of the friendly nations. And so you can see how the phenomenal growth in the drone industry that has happened. The most important thing is that the drones which India is procuring from USA, the assembly of those will be done in India. And that is also basically will help the Indian industry to get into those kind of drones, right? We have seen there are basically some of the drones which are manufactured by HL. For example, Tapas, that is basically tactical airborne platform, right? For surveillance and aerial surveillance, and those are there. Now, you have seen that this kind of drones, which are almost the length is around 31 feet and width is around 67 feet, right? Now, you have seen Rustam is also there, which can go almost up to a service ceiling of 35,000 feet. And endurance means in how much it can basically non-stop fly. That is almost 18 hours, right? And it basically has got a speed of around 350 kilometers per hour, and the dry weight it is almost 1800 kg, and it can carry almost up to 3000 around it can carry around 350 kg of payload, right? You have seen that Turkey has been doing export of drones, and the drones warfare actually changed the whole warfare during the Armenian Azerbaijan, right? Now, the TB drones, which Turkey exports, right, and around the world and quite famous in the defense industry, can carry only around 150 kg, right? And when it has got almost a hard points where it can carry missiles or this thing around 4. Now, Indian Rustam drone it carries almost basically much more weight. For example, it can carry around 350 kg, where the TB2 is only able to carry 150 kg. So that also provides a lot of potential for the Indian drone industry for the exports also, right? For example, Helena missiles, right, which basically for the tank destruction, right? Now India has developed that also. So using, for example, Rustam can carry around 7 Helena missiles in it in the wings, right? You have seen that there are basically for surveillance, the Gagan satellite system, or basically has been also been used now. These are for the navigation purpose. India has developed its own surveillance also, right? So India doesn't have to depend on any of the surveillance or any of the satellite systems of the outside. And this has also helped for India to basically manage these drones without any kind of restriction from any other countries, right? So this has also going to give a big boost to India. Next is that with the India going into the 5G, now the latency will be much less, so you can have better connectivity with these drones, and that also are basically quite positive features. So one of the other things is basically like the USA has got the GPS system. Now, in case of some of the during for example, war or any other thing, if India doesn't have its own satellite system, right, like the GPS owned by USA, if they stop it, then we will not able to basically manage this drones also. Since India has got its own satellite system, and So it becomes much easy for India to manage all these drones also. So as you can see, that is for as a student into the IT industries, this is another area where I foresee that is going to be a huge demand that is going to come up. Another thing in the drones, which are basically you can gather using the real-time information, using basically the camera vision, right? So you can have thermal cameras, infrared systems, which based on that you can gather more information, or you can have synthetic aperture radars, right, which can send waves, and based on this, it can gather the information and can pass on to the monitoring system, and from there can monitor and can find out what kind of basically systems are there, or what kind of whether it's basically kind of a human beings or basically living or non-living, right? Now, what happens in case of war or this thing? There are camouflages that are there, right? Now, if you can basically have kind of a thermal cameras, right, which basically measures the based on the heat, right? Now they can find it out whether there is a soldiers or there is not soldiers, is a living beings, or it is basically kind of a non-living things, right? Now, if, for example, your enemy is hiding inside a camouflaged area or inside kind of a artificial rock or basically inside caves, right? But human has got a temperature. Any living being has got a temperature. Based on this, the basically a thermal camera used for the night using infrared system and synthetic temperature radars with sync waves, right? This can basically help to measure the heat of those person, and based on that they can find it out whether any of the person's enemies are hiding there or not. Also, during basically rescue missions, right, this kind of drones are used to send for basically surveillance, and if they can find there any living beings, based on that they can provide the information and exact location, and then this rescue team can go there and rescue those people, right? So as you can see, the drones are being used in multiple ways, especially in the remote areas. Now you have seen during the kind of in Kashmir during the terrorist attacks, right? What we have seen is that during the jungles or basically remote places, the drones have been sent, and where they do a surveillance, and based on the surveillance, they find out exact location of the terrorist, right? And based on that, they can sell the soldiers, and they can basically utilize those terrorists. So making the surveillance much easier, and also saving our country from the terrorist activities. Right, student? Any questions? You want to say something on drones? What you understand on drones?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, tell me. So, so what do you understand by drones? Can you give some examples you have seen in day-to-day life? Okay, let me go and talk about what are the things happening around, right? Now, in fact, in last year only, in the Delhi Pragati Maidan, the government of India inaugurated India's biggest drone festival, the Bharat Drone Mahotsav. Right? And government officials had interacted with the Kishan drone pilots to witness open air drone demonstrations and interacted with the startups at the drone exhibition center. So as you can see from last year onwards, basically there has been multiple exhibitions that have been scheduled in India. This is to help the drone domestic industry and also to support the exports of the drones to the friendly nations. So, in fact, last year during the two-day Bharat Drone Mahotsav, over 1,600 delegates comprising of different government officials, foreign diplomats, armed forces, central armed forces, right? And basically the drone startup companies that participated in this Mahotsav. Why I'm talking about this? Because If you go and see the train, right, in Karnataka, especially near Bangalore, there's so many startups that are coming up in the drones because they foresee a lot of market for this. For example, the Info Age company already it has got more than 150 crores of revenue, right, on selling drones. Now there are multiple drone companies that are getting startup. For example, large players like Bharat Forge or basically Adani Group that are also investing huge amount on the drones market, right? And they're also developing a lot of drones, maybe internally with the innovations or with the partnerships, right? With basically large drone manufacturing companies. In fact, one Indian company has already invested and bought a good percentage of shares in a Turkish drone company, right? Now they're also planning to manufacture those drones and for export of drones from India. Now, in last year, during the drone festival, more than 70 exhibitors displayed various kind of drones in the exhibition that are used for different causes, right? So there are multiple variety of drones, and as you know, the drones that can be used for different purposes. Right. So multiple drone festivals are getting organized in India, right, by the government to push extensively use of the drones in the various fields, including agriculture. In fact, I was working for with another European company where basically they are working on the drones to understand basically what are the soil using the sensors in the drone, what is basically in the atmosphere, what is the humidity, the soil basically depending upon the soil nature about basically they wanted to check whether there are any kind of in the crops any pesticides are there so that based on that they can basically put the pesticides in any bugs or basically they are also checking whether there are kind of also as you know in some of the places if the elephant comes into and start basically going to the villages or damages the crops so they also monitor or check whether any kind which are the villages near the forest area, right? So those kind of animals track those also so that they should and basically provide to the forest guards or basically to the government or the local authorities to so that they do not come and damage the crops, right? So that movement is also tracked. Next is that using drones, they can also put the fertilizers or the pesticides into those crops. So person don't require to go there personally to basically distribute those pesticides or basically fertilizers into that from the they can spray those from the air and that also saves a lot of time and also what is the using the sensors they can determine the amount of quantity and the what kind of fertilizers they need to basically spray there. So they're trying to make the agriculture more and more automated, and using that, the productivity of the agriculture cost will also increase. Next is that using sensors in the drones, they also try to identify whether what is there any atmosphere, how much is the humidity, because humidity and basically rainfall really helps the growth of the crop also. Unnecessarily they will not spray water into those crops if they can identify that and also they do the surveillance of basically the agricultural lands based on that they can have use the water from the nearby canals or check where the water bodies are there and how they can get those water into the field. As you can see nowadays there are more and more technology is being used in the agriculture to increase the productivity and that is really helpful for the farmers, right? Because if they can earn more, right, they will be interested into the agriculture because human needs basically food. You can see what is happening around the world, right? Because of the Russia-Ukraine war that is happening. Ukraine is basically called the breadbasket of Europe, right? Because they, Russia and Ukraine together, they basically export 30% of the wheat, barley, lot of oil seeds like the sunflower and this thing. Now, due to the war, the export has got hampered, and already the food prices shoot up around the world. India also basically want to protect its own civilians, right? Or basically the Indians. So they've also stopped the export of the rice and wheat. Otherwise, we were exporting, but we need to feed our own people. Now, if, for example, if there are less productivity, right? Then what will happen in India will also face severe food crisis. Some of the countries do not even grow food, or basically the food crops are grown less than what are the consumption, right? For example, if you take Egypt or some other countries where they need to buy most of their products from outside. You have seen currently there are basically some tensions that is happening between India and Qatar. Just for information, Qatar basically procure a lot of food materials, crops, basically food material, and basically like rice, wheat, right, and processed foods from India. Now, as you can see, that basically it helps in the agriculture. It helps in also, for example, the drones can be used if you go to the remote villages. Now, if you need to have some medicines need to be dispatched into that, drone can basically deliver at very, very faster rate without any hindrance. And it can save the people life also. In fact, in Germany and some Europe advanced countries, if any road accident happens, before the police or basically ambulance comes, the drone can be sent immediately with the fast aid box, and they can basically help those people in accident to help the medication, and basically they can save the life of the people. And also based on the cameras, they can basically talk to the doctor directly, and based on that the doctor can also help them how to save them or basically heal them faster. Now, just to wanted to let you know that is the new federal guidelines for Kishan drone was provision with lot number of incentives for farmers and organizations for the commercial use of drones. And you will be basically happy to know that basically in India, there is a requirement of more than 1 lakh pilots for the drones, right? Because normal people cannot fly drones. You have to learn how to fly a drone. Only then you will be able to fly a drone. In fact, in the Russia-Ukraine war, you will find there are basically drones are used extensively both by Russia and Ukraine, and for that you need to be a smart pilot to drive those drones. And in India, there are basically a lot of drone schools and colleges are getting set up, and as you can see, there is a huge demand for that. Now, if anyone of you want to pursue your career as a drone pilot, there is enormous scope, right? So, and there is a big demand for this, and this is not going to be today. It is going to come more and more in the future also. So as you can see, there are a lot of ancillary things that are also coming up along with the drones. So not only the drone manufacturing, the usage of the drones, but managing those drones is also required skilled workforce, right? The training fees for these courses will decrease with the passage of time because more and more people are getting enrolled. And as you know, the fixed costs once comes down, it will really help the students also who wants to learn the drone on the training. So not only for the flying these drones, the architecture of creating drones, then basically the testing of drones, of course, in the manufacturing of these drones, a lot of you can get a good opportunity and job also. So as you can see with this, there is a huge and enormous opportunity that is coming in the drones. Any questions, students? Yes, students, any questions?
sir.
Now, what is future in drones projects in India? The government has initiated application from the drone industry for production linked incentives, what we call PLI. So a lot of Indian manufacturers has basically taken this positive news, and basically with the help of government, they're setting up big plants where they can manufacture drones, not for the consumption for Indian domestic industries or for the domestic people, but they're also planning to use this huge manufacturing base they're creating for exports also. And this will give a boost to the manufacturing and also the services in the drone, because you need to service these drones. You have to basically manage this drone. Any industry, manufacturing industry comes, there will be a lot of ancillary industries also need to be set up. As you know, these drones will be based on AI and ML also, right? Now, for example, if a drone need to fly during a rainy season, right? Your connectivity to the drone may be less. Then if the drone is not basically AI enabled, then it will lose and it will fall down. So if such hindrances come or some another drone coming in its way, right? Then basically the drones are nowadays becoming smart and smarter, and they're using their own AI, right? Using the AI, they're basically maneuvering it, and then basically they are able to reach their target, what has been assigned to them. So as you can see, those all those programmings, all those developments require smart people like you who can basically participate and can work on creating this kind of a software which will be enable these drones to work on their own using the AI. As I was telling you, there are basically large groups or large enterprises that are basically setting up big manufacturing companies like Adani's, Idleforge. Now they are basically like Adani has got a collaboration with Elbit System of Israel, where they're trying to manufacture drones. And also Indian Army has purchased multiple drones from Israel, and they're also enhancing those capabilities of them. Initially, those drones are purchased for surveillance. Now they're basically are creating them and transforming them into armed drones. So there, as you can see, there is a paradigm shift into the drone industry that is happening, where India is to basically import drones from others. Now India is going to be a major player in the drone industry and will start exporting drones to the other countries. Now, there has been a huge push from the government to make India a hub for drone development and manufacturing base for domestic consumption and for the export market. Any questions, students? Yes, students, any questions? Okay, so what kind of drones are there? There are nano drones, which are up to 250 grams. There are micro drones, which are greater than 250 grams, but less than or equal to 2 kg. There are small drones greater than 2 kg and less or equal to 25 kg. There are medium drones greater than 25 kg or less than 150 kg. There are large drones, right? The predator drones I was talking about is a large drone, which are greater than 150 kg. Now, can you tell me what kind of permission you require to fly drones in India? Yes, student. Do you require permission? Okay. So the official drone site is Digital Sky, which has the interactive airspace map. The map features green, yellow, and red zones, classified into no-fly zones or areas where you cannot fly drones. For example, the red fly zones are near. If you come to the international airport, you will find some of the areas that's marked under red fly zone. That means you cannot fly drones there. So there are basically the drones where you can fly without any license. As I told you, the 5 category of drones, you need to know that. And only the smaller versions you can fly. And also some of the drones category, you need to have a license to fly them. So, for example, you don't need any permission for operating drones in the green zone. So, those areas you can basically fly the drones, but into the red zones you cannot fly, and yellow zones you need to have a permission. Any questions, students? Yes, students. Any questions? So, in India, it's a multi-billion-dollar market. India market reached around 10,000 crores in 2021 itself. And in 2023, we can see a phenomenal growth that is happening. Now, Samita scheme is one of the scheme where basically the survey of the village properties is being done, right? Next is basically the global drone market is growing in a phenomenal speed, right? And if the annual growth rate is around 8.45 percentage, and what we see the global market is more than $30 billion currently. And India only accounts for only 4.25% of the drone market, right? And Indian drone market is planned to get the domestic drone market in India to $40 billion by 2030. So as you can understand, what is the potential of growth India is having in the drone market. So you are into the right moment, right? If you can think, if you've got a passion into the drone industry, right, to be part of that, then basically you can work on your and enhance your skill to be part of this overall ecosystem. So civil use of drones was allowed in India in 2018. So India basically planned for the national counter drones guidelines in 2019 and unmanned aircraft system UAS rules by 2020, and Minister of Civil Aviation, right, what we call the MOCA, has released an updated drone rules in 2021 for public consultation. So as you can see, the government is also changing the basically the nomenclature and rules for the drones, right? So interactive airspace map with the yellow, green, and red zones has been displayed in the digital sky platform. The green zones is basically are areas where you can fly drones. Yellow zones are reduced to 12 kilometer from 45 kilometer from the airport perimeter, and no flight permission is required up to 400 feet in the green zones. So if anybody wants to fly drones over 400 meters, they need to have permission, and 200 basically feet in the area between 8 to 12 kilometers from the airport permission. So there are basically permission also the height you can fly your drones, right? So in uh, as you can see, there are basically multiple initiatives also been provided and multiple policies that's getting framed so that it become user friendly and to fly drones and acquire drones also. So students, let me know if you can tell me some of the uses of drones and you have seen or you're aware of. Yes, students. Okay, this is some of the list where the drones are basically used, and this is not the end list, right? You can have the drones that are used for purposes like emergency and service and disaster recovery. Now, in that, for example, you have the search and rescue operation, disaster relief, and post-disaster assessment. For example, there is a flood or earthquake in the remote places. It may not be easily, people cannot reach there. You can have the drones to basically send the first aid, the food, or basically some necessary items to the people who are staying. So this has been enhanced the whole your support to those people who are basically into those remote places. For example, like yesterday, there has been an earthquake in the western part of Nepal, right? And those are remote places and basically mountainous places. Now, if they will be difficult for basically the people to reach there, right? If they have the drone technology or the drones, it can be easily the food or base medicine or necessary things can be provided to the people there. Next is the security services. Now, using the from the drone, you have the facial recognition. Using the facial recognition, they can track any terrorist or basically any unwanted person into the locality, and based on that they can inform the nearest security people who can basically take care of that. And also for the surveillance or for basically to check regarding the for example, I will share basically a case study. For example, a construction company, road construction company, right? In case of road construction company, now if you want to go and do a surveillance, now it will take good amount of time to do a construction for a road, depending upon what are the barriers are there not, what is the kind of obstacles it can face. Using the aerial surveillance of these drones, they can basically plot and map which is the best way to create the road construction with minimum cost or minimum hindrances in which areas that, or whether it, what are the activities or how much time it will take to construct that overall road. If it has been done humanly, the person going and doing the actual visit by road or this thing, walking there to that places, it would have taken a lot and lot of time. So as you can see here, what is happening that using this drone, the construction of the road industry, using the surveillance, it's helping them a lot, and then they can create the road much faster because they know ahead of them what are the obstacles they can face, what are the challenges they can face, and based on that they can rectify it also. I've talked about the agriculture, right? So, in fact, in the agriculture also, they can basically identify whether any kind of insects or bugs are basically using the aerial surveillance. They can look into the crops, right? And they can, based on that, they can have the pesticides, right? They can spray it over the crops to prevent them from getting those top crops damaged. Similarly, they can spray basically water from the aerial for the best of basically growth of those crops also. Or they can basically using the surveillance, they can tell where the nearby water bodies are there, and so that it can help those crops to get water from those nearby water bodies. Another case where the drones is extensively used by the forest department is in identify and tracking of the animals. Right now, that as you know, each we have got a thumbprints. Right, the animal has got a footprints. Based on the foot, they can identify the animals. Right, and based on that, also where the direction they're going and moving, and based on that, they can track the whole hard movement of the animals also. Now, this will also not only protect these animals and also basically save those animals from extinction, also will help the forest department to identify whether this herd of animals or these animals moving in the right direction in the forest, or they should not be getting out of the forest and then come to the villages and they can destroy the crops, or basically, as you know, whether any poachers or that is basically the hunters, illegal hunters into the forest, tracking them and basically to save the extinct animals. As you know, the animals have become some of the animals become extinct, and it's very difficult if you do not have a surveillance cameras and in the forest or the remote places. It's not humanly possible to go and visit those places. Using the drones and the surveillance system, they're able to manage that. And also they can basically do the environment impact assessment and compliance using the drones, right, using the sensors. They can also help those activities also. Next is basically in the urban planning and the real estate and agriculture. Excuse me, I got a throat infection. Just bear with me. So in the urban planning and the real estate, it also really helps because, in fact, as I told you, depending upon the obstacles or depending upon the landscape, they can basically help to create proper uh, plan and architecture, and which will really help them at the least cost, the best possible construction that can be created. Now, if you person goes physically and go to those places and do it, it will take a lot of time, and still some part may be left out. So to remove the uncertainty, it is always better to use the aerial surveillance, and based on the surveillance, they can find it out how best they can do the architecture of that place, or with the construction it can be done. Next is that the most important thing is the site analysis and planning and design for kind of an urban, or basically planning also that can be done. So from which side the roads that can come and connect it also, they can identify much easy, and what are the hindrance in the landscape they can identify using the aerial surveillance, and those can also be basically removed, right? So as you can see, the drones are playing a major roles in the non-defense areas. In media and communications, right? You can see that basically a lot of advertisement also can be done using drones. In fact, the swarm drone system using the drones, some of the cases in the sky, they have created kind of an advertisement. You have seen some of the cases like the opening ceremonies in the Olympic Games or in the World Cups, and this thing they use sometimes the drones to create basically a spectacular formation, and it's really what watching those how using the drones they can create a beautiful pictures, and basically which the spectators absolutely glued into those phenomenal display of what they show into the sky, right? Similarly, what happens is that you have seen the marriages which commonly you can see using drones from the aerial, they can take the picture, right? Or any other functions that are happening in nowadays. Next is in the case of recreation and entertainment, also using web drones, basically they are also helping a lot of industries and people, and there are basically lot of remote control uh, clubs that teaches drones, right? And where through which you can do some of the people are taking it as a hobby also, and exploring it, where they can take pictures or they can basically using these drones, they are trying to using the cameras, they're trying to view what are the things available, right? Which basically if you want to go to a forest and want to take some pictures from the top, it's very difficult. You have to use plane or helicopter, but it will fly at a high speed. So using drones, they can stop these drones, take the pictures using from the remote places, and they can basically, based on the hobby of taking pictures or this thing, they can do it, right? Now, as you can see in the basically business, commerce, and industry, drones is playing a major role. So, as I told you, this is not the absolutely full list of areas where the drones are used. So, I just want to check with you that from your side, whether you please let me know some of the use cases of drones. Yes, students. Hello, students. Yeah, please tell me some of the use cases of drones. What do you think? Tell me some other use cases. What the drones can do. Please unmute and please let me know. No volunteers? Okay.
Yes,
So,
sir. Firefighting, surveillance, and reconnaissance,
yeah,
precision agriculture, aerial photography, those things.
good. Any other thing you can think of where basically the drones usage can be there? So as you can see, in fact, this is the kind of a niche area, and it's very, very interesting, right? If you want to pursue a career in any of these drones or ancillary drone industry, in fact, as you can know, they want skilled people, right? And since you will be one of the people who will be, I'll not say initial, but still it's very, very growing industry in the initial stage or this thing, your growth career or path will be very, very high. The more experience you get into this industry, right, more will be your remuneration. So that is what I was talking about. This is the trends and mega trends that is happening, right? So any other person volunteer before I move on to the next topic? And very, very interesting topic. So I just give few minutes to you if you want to share your thought process or any questions. Yes, student, any questions from you?
No, sir.
Okay, so if you don't have any questions, so give me 2 minutes. Let me have some water because my throat has become dry. I got a throat infection, and I will start with a new topic. Okay, just give me 2 minutes. Yes, student, I'm back now. So let's start with a new area or new topic, right? So let me share my screen again. Just let me know once you're able to see my screen, okay? Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about basically about the GDP, right? And this topic is very, very important to understand, right? Because as you know, I hope all of you are able to see my screen, right? Now, what to understand by the GDP? So GDP is basically stands for gross domestic product, and it represents the total monetary value of all the fiscal goods and services produced and sold on the market within the country during a period of time, typically 1 year. Now, can you tell me in the global this thing where India stands in the GDP? What is India's rank? Yes, students. Can anybody of you tell me what is the India's rank? Yes, students. India ranks in the world is number 5, and India shortly going to take over basically Japan because Germany has taken over Japan and become the global rank number 3 in the global GDP. Number 1 is by USA, second is China, now is Germany, fourth is Japan, and fifth is India. And India is shortly going to basically be the number 4, taking over Japan and going to be then number 3 within very few years. As a student, why GDP is very, very important to you? Let me walk you through the slides and I will tell you what is basically you're going to learn in the GDP and how you can contribute and how it's going to help in your career. Right? So as you can see, as per the definition, right, the gross domestic product GDP is basically the total market value of goods and services produced by a country's economy during a specified period. It also measures the income earned from the productions or the total amount spent on the final goods and services, less imports. Currently, you're seeing after the GST has come, in fact, last month we had got around 1.72 lakh crore of GST collection. Now, that was almost 13% increase from the previous year. That means our collection of GST is going up. That means our amount from the goods and services is also increasing, the production. That means we are growing. When you are in a growing economy, when you're in a country which is growing, there are a lot of opportunities that are going to come. In fact, the countries which are not growing, you will find less and less opportunities. That means, as a student, you are going to look for basically good employment. You're going to, if you want to basically be an entrepreneur, that means you're going to look whether if the economy is growing, that will throw a lot of opportunities for you, right? And then basically you can embark your path on that opportunities and you can grow faster and faster. More the economy is growing, you have got a chance to basically have better standard of living, better earning capacity, and also you will basically have better lifestyle, right? Isn't all of you looking for that? Yes or no? Okay, so GDP is the most common use measurement of economic activity. While GDP is the single most important indicator to capture the economic activity, it fails to short providing a suitable measurement of people material well-being for which it is used. So of course, there are some alternative measures that can be used, but still GDP is the most important measure through which we can understand, capture the how much economic activity is going. So the world global GDP is around $1.4 trillion. Okay. So there are some external factors like geographic, logistics, and there are basically some internal factors on the GDP, like the IT, infrastructure, and services and manufacturing. Right. So what we for basically in case of the GDP, we can move to the next slides and get better understanding how it is calculated and how, as basically as students, you can be part of that also. So measurement of GDP. There are multiple measurement. These are basically, I just let you know so that it will be helpful in your future, because if you know what is basically the projects you're working and what value it adding to the GDP, that will basically help you to have much better focus on that also, and how you're helping the country as an India. One is the output method. This measures the monetary or the market value of all goods and services produced within the borders of the country in order to avoid distorted measure of GDP due to the price level changes. GDP at constant prices to real GDP is computed. The GDP as per the output method equal to real GDP, that is GDP at constant prices minus taxes plus subsidies. Of course, in short term, in case of output method, it is basically what is the real GDP, right? That is the real GDP is the GDP at constant prices minus the taxes plus subsidies that has been provided. So based on that, this output method, that is basically the goods and services produced within the country within that period, right? That market value of that. So this is how the output method is getting calculated. Next is expenditure method. This measures the total expenditure incurred by all the entities on goods and services within the domestic boundaries of a country. Again, you have to understand an expenditure that is within the country. Now, if a person is basically doing expenditure going outside India and making some expenditure, that will not be calculated. So anybody making any expenditure within the country boundary of India, that will be taken into account for the purpose of GDP calculation. So GDP as per the expenditure method equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus IM, where C is the consumptions expenditure, I is the investment expenditure, G is the government spending, and X minus M is the export minus imports. That is the net exports. Now you have to understand why I'm talking about. Like for India, if it imports a lot of crude oil from outside, that means it is not good for Indian GDP. Now I was talking about the drones. Now if India start exporting more and more drones, that means India's GDP, it is going to benefit. So you have to understand as a student, now if you are basically how you can help the Indian economy. One is that if a lot of investment comes in, right, that basically really helps to grow the GDP of India. If the consumption increases, if the economy is growing, then what will happen? The people will get a lot of money, or they will have salary increase, or basically potential of increase of their income, and based on the income they will basically spend it also, right? When they spend it, for example, buy any property, you buy any car, if you want washing machine, TV, all those are basically expenditure you are making, right? And based on those expenditure, you are basically helping the Indian GDP to grow also. Government does for a lot of infrastructure projects, a lot of investment it does, and if it does on those, basically what it helps into the growth of the Indian GDP. In income method, it measures the total income earned by the factors of production, that is the labor capital within the domestic boundaries of the country. The GDP as being income method is GDP at a factor cost plus taxes minus subsidies. In India, the contribution to GDP are mainly divided into three broad sectors. Agriculture, still in India, agriculture is very, very important because maximum number of people in India still are engaged in the agriculture industry. Next is basically the service industry and also basically the manufacturing industry that are basically helping into the GDP of India. In India, GDP is measured as the market prices, and the best year for this computation is 2011 and 12, and GDP at the market prices equal to GDP at a factor cost plus indirect taxes minus subsidies. So from 2011-12, what are the increase from the prices that has been taken, and that is how we are basically measure how the GDP has been grown. And generally, the GDP growth has been measured quarter to quarter or year to year. Mostly it's year to year how the GDP growth has been happening. I move on to the next slide. Basically, this talks about high level on the expenditure method of GDP calculation. So the formula for calculating GDP with expenditure approach is the following: GDP equal to private consumption plus gross private investment plus government investment plus government spending plus export minus imports. Right? The GDP is usually calculated by National Statistical Agency of the country following the international standard. Any question in this, students? Because it's very clear that the GDP as per the expenditure method is based on the what are the private consumptions peoples of India is having, gross private investment, what are the investment we are making within that period or year, government investments and government spending, plus exports minus imports. I move on to the next slide. That is basically income method of GDP calculation. This is basically the GDP calculation I also like the most. According to this income approach, the GDP can be computed by finding total national income, that is called the TNI, and then adjusting it for sales tax and depreciation. Now, student will ask, what is depreciation, right? Now, depreciation is basically the plant and machinery, right? When they are used and they basically the life of those machines comes down, right? Or there are basically these machines, the value of those machines also comes down because of their usage, right? So as you can see, for example, a machine maybe after 5 years, then you have to scrap it because the machine cannot work after 5 years because its repair cost will be much more than basically and so it becomes kind of a obsolete items, or basically due to the technology advancement or the productivity of that machines become decreased or get eroded. And for that, in financial this thing, we have to basically each year we have to take a percentage of that basically machine which need to be the value need to be reduced from the book, right? And that is what called the depreciation. Of course, in India, as per the Companies Act, there is a percentage defined on the each class of the machineries or the plant, or that need to be reduced. And also, as per the Income Tax Act, there is also a percentage of rate that has been provided. And to make it more complicated, depending upon the usage, also we need to look into the depreciation. For example, if a plant machinery is being used in one shift, the depreciation will be much less. But if it is used in the 2 shift or 3 shift, the same machinery, the percentage of depreciation or erosion of that machine will be much higher. Right? Any questions, student? Okay. Next is, first we have to find the total national income. The total national income is the sum of all the income of a country, residents, and the businesses is earned during a certain period. This include all the salaries, wages, the rent, interest, profit from businesses, right? Or the ventures, the people that has done, or the corporates, And you have to note that these components are sometimes listed separately in the GDP formula. So that is the GDP equal to W plus R plus I plus P plus T plus D plus F, right? So we know what are the things, right? And however, the sake of simplicity, we can stick to the formula mentioned above. That is basically TNI plus T plus D plus F. Now, I will just give us basically an example that will really help you. Now, you think of a small country, right, called K-Land, right, which has got only 100 inhabitants. However, they earn a total income, this 100 people, around 20 lakhs in wages and salaries, and 5 lakhs in rent, and 1,50,000 in interest income. In addition to that, there are 10 companies located into the K-Land. Let's assume they make a profit of 40 lakhs, plus they earn an additional 5 lakhs as rent and 3.5 lakhs in interest. So what will be total national income of the INR in INR or in the rupees for this? Specifically, if you can take 20 lakhs is the wages and salaries, plus 5 lakhs in rent, plus 1,50,000 in interest, right? Plus their companies are making a profit of 40 lakhs, plus additional 5 lakhs as rent and 3.5 lakhs in interest. And overall, it becomes around 75 lakhs is the total, basically the income, right? So based on that, they can have a calculation with the GDP and they will compare from the previous year how much is the increase or decrease. Any questions, student? Yes, student, any questions? Are you able to hear me? Yes, students. Any questions? Are you able to hear me? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. Now, looking into this, as I was showing you, it's 2022, that is last year. India ranked around 3.53. Now it's India is around 3.7. And as you can see, Germany has overtaken Japan. Japan's already, there is a decrease in basically the GDP growth. So as you can understand, India is going, by very few years, India going to be the third biggest GDP in rank wise. So you can see you are very, very fortunate to be part of India as an Indian citizen. You got up into a very, very high growth. Next is that India will be by 2050, India will be the second biggest ranking in the GDP. That means India is going to overtake USA and China going to be the number one. So looking at this, what you can find out is that if you basically be part of a growing economy, you would basically have got a huge scope for your earning. Also, basically, you can have a better lifestyle. Now, let me just take you to a link, right? If I click on this, let me just show you. So this is the link which I have there, right? Now, are you able to see my screen? Yes, students. Hello, students, are you able to see my screen? Hello.
No, sir.
Yes or no?
No, sir.
You're not able to see. Okay. Let me just do one thing. Let me share my screen again. Can you see my screen?
See, now it's visible, sir.
Okay, so as you can see here, right? Now, before you were able to see my screen, which was sharing, or you were not able to see? Were you able to see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I talked about this one, right? I was giving you an example of this, right? How the income method is calculated, right? Isn't it? Now, this is basically India currently stand at 5th position, but as I was telling you, Germany has already taken Japan and Japan's GDP is coming down. India will be basically fourth, I think, by next year, and going to be in another few years, India is going to be the third, and India by another maybe a 1 decade more, India will be basically the second. So you can see how India is progressing, and you're part of this journey. Right now, very interesting thing is that about this. Let me go and show you. Now, as you can see, the countries, if you take this you can also check yourself. For example, USA, right? USA is growing at 2.1%. Can you see this one? Canada is growing by 1.3%. Right? Now, if I take Australia, it's going by only 1.8%. Can you tell me what is the growth rate of UK? UK is only going by 0.5%. Can you see? Now, basically, our neighbor, Pakistan is growing by 0.5% negative. If I go to Sri Lanka, no data because Sri Lanka is going through major turmoil financially. If I go to Bangladesh, it's growing by 6%. It's a growing economy. If I go to Myanmar, it's 2.6%. If I go to China, it's around 5%. So you can see China used to grow almost double digit. Now it has already reduced its growth story. And let's go to India. You can see it's 6.3%. And you have seen that also, I think today, newspaper, if you go and see that regarding the India's GDP growth, the World Bank has said 6.3%, but they're saying India should plan around 8% growth to basically grow much, much faster, because Indian, basically, if you see, around $3.5 trillion is Indian GDP, whereas China is almost $15 trillion, right? So China is much, much higher than India. Now, India, if he has to basically move ahead into the ladder, it has to move into the faster GDP. As a student, why I'm going to talking about this GDP? Because you need to understand, if you create creativity, if you work, your income and everything, you are helping to grow the Indian GDP, isn't it? Right? Now, if I go to the countries, so you can see very less countries in the world, right, have got higher in basically GDP growth than India. Now, if you go to, for example, uh, let's go to Finland, it's negative. If you go to Sweden, it's negative. If I go to Germany, Lithuania, if I go to Germany, Germany is also negative, 0.5%. Right? Germany is it's the biggest economy in Europe. So as you can see, what is the trend and mega trend you can see in this? They're already the Europe market, or basically is going to, due to Russia-Ukraine war, is going to major turmoil. Now with the Middle East, with the Israel and Palestine war, now you can see there is already Israel economy is going to be, GDP is going to come down by 11%, they're saying. And that is basically increasing the crude oil prices, and that is going to impact very, very bad for those countries which are importing. And India is one of them, right? Of course, if we do not increase our export, reduce our import, right, on the crude and this thing, our growth story also will come down. So as you can see from this, another story comes in, right? There has to be lot of development in the renewable energy, lot development on the basically fuel efficient machineries, and also how we can enable the development of basically self-sufficient in some of the sectors where we are importing, right? Next is how we can increase our export. For example, one of the things in India export maximum, if you know, is the IT software, right? Or basically the software engineers around the world are been working, and that is the biggest industry, one of the biggest industry in India is having. And you being part of those sector, right? You can see a phenomenal growth that you can see on this. Now, If the global economy is coming down, what happens? The investments also comes down for the IT sector. Then they will be looking how to basically reduce the manual effort and basically do for more automation, right? That means if they want to go for more automation, that means they have to also have a lot of AI and ML need to build into that. And where as a student you can foresee your basically area also where you can do and get that trained and mega trained is coming, where you can enable yourself, and if you can work, you are going to get good opportunities and jobs or basically areas to work on. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you can basically look into those areas. Similarly, you can see, for example, in Africa, right, which the economies are very, very small. Like, of course, like Egypt is 4.2, but now they're facing major problem. If you, in fact, last class I've shown you how in Egypt the economy is basically getting problem, right? Because still they are able to basically have got potential, but they've got a food crisis because they do not grow and the food prices are going up, right? So they are also may not be able to grow at this maybe at this higher level, right? So looking at this moment, India at this moment stand a good chance of growing its economy much, much faster. Yes, student, please let me know if you've got any questions. Or any other country you want to see. For example, if you go to Argentina, minus 2.5%, Chile, minus 5%, Brazil, another economy is growing, a part of the BRIC. So that is why the BRIC is very, very important, 3.1%. If you see the Russia, it has got a negative growth, but now it is again growing. The GDP is growing because it's able to export a lot of oil and gas, right? And still now it's basically enhancing its GDP growth story again. So student, tell me, any other country you want to see? And you can yourself do it also. So what do you understand from this?
No, sir.
See, when you're working any projects and IT projects also, right, you need to understand what value you're going to bring in your customer. If you cannot bring any value to the customer, why the customer will pay to you, right? Similarly, what value you're bringing to your country, how you're helping the country in the GDP growth and make your country more stronger and stronger. Good. So this is what I wanted to talk about the GDP, right? So and walk you through how basically it's very, very important for any of these countries to have a higher GDP. Now, do you know one thing in China, the growth story you have been hearing, right? The China is growing in a phenomenal way, isn't it? Yes or no? Yes, student. But
Yes,
just wanted to let you know how the Chinese economy grows, right? China has been pumping money into the real estate market, right? They're doing multiple infrastructure projects around China. You have seen that China has been doing a lot of projects around the world, right? Brick and road projects, basically connecting and this thing. One of them is basically in Pakistan, right? Where they wanted to create basically connecting their country to the Arabian Sea and through wanted to export their goods. Now, Pakistan economic zone, what they created, it's become a flop because still it has not seen the basically light of the day. Already there, like in Balochistan, lot of issues and protests are happening, right? And what is happening if such an investment happens, and if you don't get a return on that, then basically you are going to lose money. That means loss. You're going to make a loss. Similarly, in China, what happens is that they are basically doing a lot of investment on the infrastructure or in the residential or properties. Now, because of which, basically, if there is less growth on that, then what happens is that the whole economy creates a problem. Of course, China's economy is like a bubble. Now, they are basically doing kind of a, as you know, they're trying to create a picture, absolutely painting the picture to be very, very green, because they do not provide full information about their economy. You have seen that in China, there has been major failure by the real estate companies. So one of the major real estate company, which has got around $400 billion, right? It basically become bankrupt. And a lot of people, the poor people, I'll not say poor people, a lot of investors or people who invested their whole life saving into the residential properties suddenly find their whole money has gone into the drain and they have got nothing left. Of course, they made protest, but as you know, China, you cannot go public, and everything was uh, didn't allow into the media, and they were absolutely those were stopped, and they could not worldwide. They was not aware of that, but still inside China, people has lost huge amount of money. So let me just show you what is happening. The China actually has created huge number of residential apartments, flats, and this thing. And there's cities and cities in China that is not a single person is living, and those are called the ghost towns or cities of China. Right? So let me show you a video what is happening in China, so that at least you are aware. If you don't make the investment properly, then what happens to the this thing, right? So you should be aware of this, that the projects you're taking or undertaking or work you're doing, whether it's adding value or not. If it's not adding the value, then basically what happens, those are the problems you're going to face in your life also. Okay, let us go and see a video. Let me know once you're able to see my screen. Okay, are you able to see my screen? Yes, students.
Yes, sir.
So let me just go and China's school starts.
The globe, the Chinese government took action swiftly with a massive stimulus
So are you able to see the screen and hear the voice, the video?
Yes, sir.
package, which just didn't help stabilize and revive the Chinese economy. It became a lifeline to the world. With a country building a city the size of Chicago every year, sometimes things always don't go as planned. This is China's largest ghost city. China's most deserted ghost town, Kangbashi, Ordos. Would you ever want to live in a deserted
So it's Inner Mongolia. They made huge investment. You can see it's such a big city, right? People are not living there.
city? We all know China is one of the fastest growing countries in the world. With new roads and world famous infrastructures rising faster than ever, China builds beautiful and diverse cities of culture. While China builds new cities, inhabiting these big cities will take much longer than expected. Hundreds of kilometers west of Beijing, in the arid deserts in Inner Mongolia, is Ordos, China. A new, infamous city was born. With generous roads and gorgeous infrastructures, this city, built from scratch, shocked the world for something.
So you can see huge amount of investment they have done, right? Building the cities. Now you may ask, why basically an investment in infrastructure helps to grow the GDP? In fact, any investment in infrastructure, as I was telling you, what happens? It basically boosts the production into the cement, steel. A lot of people basically get jobs in building this industry, right? In turn, those people who are getting engaged in basically construction, right? They earn money. And what they will going to do, they will basically use this money to send their kids to school, buy clothes, buy food, buy washing machine, geysers, TVs, fridge, cars. In turn, what will happen? Those industry will also get money, right? Their revenue will increase. They will also engage a lot of people to work in those companies. So as a whole, the whole economy gets basically a boost, and all the basically the area also developed, and people have much more earnings. And that is how, as I told you, that's what the definitions I told you about the GDP. And that is how basically the GDP of a country increases. Right? Now, as you can see here, the China actually trying to do an artificial way of basically increase the overall GDP, what we call ballooning, creating a balloon of air, thin air of increasing the economy, right, student? So always a growth, what you see in other countries may not be actual growth. It is basically created artificially by that country.
They did not quite have people. This ghost town is called Kangbashi District, infamous for its empty streets, abandoned high-rises, and deserted homes. The question is, why was Kangbashi called a ghost town? Journalists flocked to Kangbashi from the BBC, Al Jazeera, and highlighted the lack of people living in the city.
你觉不觉得以下场景很熟悉啊？
As you can
你
see
走进
here,
巷口的中
what
医
is
诊所，
happening is
好
that
不容易排了老长的队，
multiple
Statements quickly
countries also send the reporters here to find out, right, why the city has become like this. BBC, all of you know, is basically one of the leading media company. Al Jazeera is basically, as you know, a media company of Qatar. In fact, Qatar wanted to diversify from basically oil and gas exports, so they created an Al Jazeera, basically a news channel and basically a media company, and in fact, one of the leading company of the Middle East in the media and the on this. Okay, so let's go and play the video.
spread, earning a global reputation with many names: a ghost town, dead city, a failed dystopian. This new city soon gained infamous headlines, showcased not for all the things it already had, but for what it lacked, namely citizens.
From a town in Inner Mongolia where gleaming buildings built with government money stand empty.
Welcome to the city of Ordos, a city of the future. But no one's moved in. The city stands empty. This is what Ordos looked like 2 years ago, a city of the future in the middle of nowhere. To our confusion, no one lived in Ordos.
They tell us that almost every single one of these apartment units have been sold, but no one is living in any of them. The building hasn't stopped. Somehow people are convinced that if you keep building, people will come.
It's a ghost city with ghost apartments. No host or hostess, just ghost owners.
So the incentives in the system are to build. And if that's the easiest way to achieve that growth, then you build.
So local officials here built. Empty homes, new and neat. Block after block.
You will be amazed that more than 60 million houses or apartments in China are vacant. So it means 60 million is 6 crore apartments or flats in China, but nobody lives.
In 2009, this city was in a constant stream of criticism from international media. According to the media, Kangbashi had been the recipient of a Chinese financial crisis. The international media sensationalized about Kangbashi and commented municipal debt, oversupply, or bankrupt developers to attract readers. Many media outlets have declined to return to the area or offer a follow-up update, and that is what we're about to do now. Savvy reporters from the Times Magazine and Al Jazeera did not ask municipal governments before making any of these statements. In fact, what was glossed in these reports is only the surface of Kambashi's progress. The city's construction only began a mere 6 years before. That is not enough time to finish a new city and have it fully populated, something Western media did not understand. In fact, this isn't one of the first time that China got the reputation of a ghost city. Pudong was one of the first ghost cities, now a prominent global financial district of Shanghai. Kangbashi is an urban district of the prefecture-level city of Ordos in Inner Mongolia, China. Built on the wasteland of Inner Mongolia, was constructed to accommodate the number of investors in this booming mining town. During that time, coal and natural gas made Ordos one of the richest places in China. The Chinese government thought Kangbashi was going to be one of the fastest growing.
So what happened is that it was mining industry was there, and they wanted to create that and thought a lot of people will buy them. Now you need to understand how China works, right? China, in fact, doesn't have got like stock market like India. Of course, the people there are still is a country which is very very restricted. So people don't have avenues for investments. So it's basically artificially has been created that if you buy a real estate that is a secured, and then basically since the prices are, there is always a growth in the Chinese economy and this thing, the prices of real estate increases. So people basically borrow a lot of their money or basically life saving and put it into buying the apartments, thinking that when they retire, the prices of their apartment will increase and they can sell it off and make good fortune and they can have their old age living peacefully. Now, what happens is that if they lose this amount of money, then they are basically in the old age, they will have a major problem. There are basically apartments in China where they don't have even a window or a door, right? Because it is only for investment purpose, not for living. You will see in this maybe video or some other videos, if you Google search, you will find there are some apartments they have created where even water is not connected there. It is basically kind of an artificial boom they created on the infrastructure where people has invested, and those has basically make the whole economy grow at very very fast pace. But this is not a sustainable economy. Let's go and see the video more. Then you will understand that if those kind of investments are done and if you are part of those kind of a project on this thing, then basically the working in those industry or this thing is basically quite harmful and not benefited because people, when the companies go for bankrupt, they lose their jobs.
Cities in China. However, in 2009, plans fell apart due to the Ordos and world financial economic crisis. And now, Ordo City, Kangbashi New Area, is frequently described by the news media as a ghost city. This 90 square mile town was built to house 1 million people. The idea behind Kangbashi was for it to serve as an administrative center of government offices and Ordos municipality of the middle and upper class residents.
Another story.
Ordos municipality is divided up in various districts, towns, and sub-cities, the most politically separated people and destinations. However, the emptiness of Kangbashi is a deception. This new Chinese city.
So then basically what is the plan that China is doing to revive this city? You will see that also in this video. So that at least they are trying to get the people, more and more people into the city. So what they have done also is that they have created some of the universities or colleges in and around this city. And they, in China, as you know, thing is that getting into elite colleges on this thing is very, very prestigious and there are huge competition. In the video, you will find what they've done is that they've said that those people who are basically having apartment here or are staying here will basically going to get the first preference in studying these colleges. Now the parents basically purchase apartments, then basically their kids started going there, so they get the preference of basically studying there. Similarly, the professors, this thing, and slowly they are trying to revive the city. Of course, still only basically 1/4 or 1/5 of the city is occupied, but still from very, very less people now this is getting revived. So let's go and see the video.
Is far from dead. The original plan for Kambashi is 1 million people by 2023. And we all know the progress of China. In the middle of 2019, Ordos and the government of China secretly reversed the town's fortune with one amazing strategy. Ordos, with the help of the government, moved some of the city's top schools to Kambashi, which meant if the parents wanted their children to get the best education, parents had to move their children to Kambashi. Putting such top prestige schools was not originally in the strategy, but it was the right strategic move. Parents did move their children to Kambashi, and the population slowly added in numbers, slowly bringing this city the life it deserved. Certain regulations had to be followed. If parents wished to send their young children to a school in a particular district, they must also own a home in the exact district. Teachers also relocated because of cheap relocation taxes, discounted homes, and tax breaks offered. Soon, businesses and restaurant franchises such as McDonald's and Subway followed suit. With subsidized rent, free transportation, and low property taxes, people started flocking into Kambashi. In 2020, the population of Kambashi grew from a measly 30,000 to a whopping 200,000 people.
So, students, as you can see here, right, how basically they turned the fortune of the city, and of course, from 1 million, at least 1/5 of the city, they got basically residents staying. So, what you understand from this is that you need to basically have proper analysis of your financials. You need to know whatever projects you are doing. If you are not able to do the proper analysis, right, those projects will also fail. Yeah, anybody want to say anything? Akhil, you want to say something? Hello, student, any questions? So this is very, very important when you're going to take up project. What is the value addition you're going to, what is the return on the investment your project is going to give, right? So they have spent huge amount of money into those cities they build, and they've used a lot of automations, right? For example, when I've been to China, right, I've been multiple times. Now you will find there basically skyscrapers which are more than 80-story buildings are there, huge buildings they will create, right? They have got, in fact, a lot of automations on these buildings they've used. But if such investment, if people are not staying, right, then basically the rate of return will be on those investment will be very, very less. And that is why you can see a lot of basically failures of the real estate companies is happening. Of course, those are not, all are not coming, but still some of the major companies has come. Because in China, you have got restrictions. For example, when I go there, no Facebook, no YouTube, no Twitter, right, student? Now, you know, without that, your life basically is all surrounded by the social media. So you will not get those access to any of those. They have their own basically social media. You have to have an access to that. For example, WeChat, they use popularly, which basically like a WhatsApp we use. And they have got their own basically kind of a Google. They have their own basically apps which they use. So as you can see, they have developed their own, but they have basically make their population only to have the information knowledge, but within China what is happening, and outside world they are not basically aware what is happening inside. So this is what I wanted to tell you, is that though the innovations are happening around, right, that has to be done in a proper way. Let's see another video on China, and then we move on to the new area and topic. Okay, let me share my screen again, right? And we go to another video.
Chinese government took action swiftly. We all know China.
உனக்கு எந்த ஹீரோ
So what we see is that in case of China is that they are actually facing a huge problem in the economy currently, and that is why basically they are diverting themselves into the people into different things. For example, the escalations with Taiwan they're having. Similarly, you will see they have got with all the neighbors. For example, Philippines, they're having some problems already due to some islands, right? The South China Sea, they're creating problem. East China Sea, they're having problem with Japan and Taiwan. With India, already you have seen what happened in the Galwan Valley. So to divert the people's basically attention, they're creating a lot of external issues, right? Next is that so this is what I just wanted to give you an idea how basically you can help the global basically your country's GDP and what are the pros and cons, right? And you have seen how basically a country which made basically in the project they made a mistake like the ghost city, which they're trying to turn it around and try to create more people to come there, at least to try to make it viable. But still, there are basically a lot of apartments and this thing which are lying vacant. Okay, so let's go to another new interesting topic. Now I'm going to talk about basically. Are you able to hear me? Yes, students. Hello, students. Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
so this is Ashwin here, sir, from Kionix.
Yes, yes, Ashwin.
Sir, actually today's college is half day. Probably 1
Oh.
o'clock they'll be ending their college classes.
Okay, okay. Then maybe I was thinking of going to the design thinking. So then
Is
I
it,
will.
sir?
Maybe I'll just design thinking, right? I will talk about in the next session then,
Yes, yes, sir, please.
because this is very very interesting topic, and for any of the development and this thing, right?
Yes, sir.
This would be a good thing to learn. Okay,
Sure,
then,
sir.
students. Okay, so have a great weekend, and see you in the next class.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.